Hello and welcome back. This is Madan. In the previous demo, we created the generic repository and created the particular repository for our model, that is the student repository and teacher repository, and we inherited that repository from our generic repository class. So in this demo, we are going to see how we work with our generic repository. So for the sake of this demo, let's create a controller here. So I'm going to create the student controller, std and student CNTR controller, and I'm going to show how we can use our generic repository to perform the CRUD operations for every single model. So let's copy this name for now, and then let's create a class in the namespace of generic controllers, and let's define the actual class, public class of student controller, and inherit that from controller base class controller. So let's bring in the namespace, which is microsoft.asp.netcore.mbc, and let's create the constructor here, student controller. And in order to work with the repository, we need to pass the repository as a parameter in our constructor. That is, we need to inject the corresponding repository. So let's inject I student repository repository student repository repository, and let's bring in the namespace for our student repository, and let's create the private field so that we can reuse the repository for our whole class code. And then let's say we want to retrieve all the students from our database, then we create the method called public I action result index, and let's return view now, view. And in order to get all the students, let's define the variable students to hold multiple students from database. And now we can use our student repository, and here we can see all those methods that we have defined in our generic repositories are available, although we haven't defined any of those methods in the respective repository. Actually, our student repository class is empty, and the same for the case of teacher repository. Our teacher repository class is also empty, but we have inherited that class from the generic repository. So all those methods that we have defined in our generic repository are available to our single repositories. So let's go over to the student controller, and what you can do is student repository dot find all, and you can do same for the teacher controller. You just need to call this method, and we don't now, since the methods to perform the CRUD operations is almost same for every single model. So with the generic repository in place, we don't need to write the code for all the repositories. We can reuse the same code that is in our base class generic repository. So student controller, and we have students, and we can simply pass students here. Similarly, if you want to create the record, what you can do is, let's just take the simple example of create, and since we are not taking any data from our view, so let's just give return view, and let's just create a student here. So variable student equal to new student, student student, and let's initialize it here. Let's say first name equal to, and then let's bring in the namespace for the control Z student. Let's bring in the namespace model.student, and now I can use the student repository here, and then create method create, and then pass the student. So in this way we can use the generic repository to simplify our repositories, common methods in our repositories. So the one last thing what you need to do is we need to go to our data and then define the respective properties for our student model. So dbset of students, and then let's bring in the namespace here, and then from dbset of teacher, teachers, With this in place, if you run the migration and update that migration against the database, and if you create the respective views for the teacher and the students, then you can perform the CRUD operations for teacher and student with the use of the single generic repository without writing any method or any code in the respective models repository. So this is it for this video. Thanks for watching and have a great day.